Hi all, welcome to this video on basic video on histology, which is going to be our study of tissues. So what are tissues? Tissues are going to be groups of cells that are similar in structure and function, right? So in our levels of organization, tissues are larger than cells, but smaller than organs. There are going to be four primary tissue types, which we're going to discuss here. I think I'm going to break the video up into two parts because our first two tissues take a little while. Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. So those are going to be our four primary tissue types. Ultimately, again, these organize themselves into organs, which are going to be made of multiple tissues, but ultimately coming together to perform a function for the body. So our first tissue that we're going to focus on is epithelial tissue. And in terms of what I'm going to ask you to memorize, this is going to have the most different things to memorize. So epithelial tissue is also called epithelium. Excuse me. The main functions of epithelial tissue is to line the body, line various organs or the body, cover things, and they can also act as glands. Other general functions is protection, absorption, filtration, and secretion. Some characteristics of epithelial tissue. They generally fit really closely together in continuous sheets. They always have one free surface or edge called the apical surface. They also are avascular, this A prefix meaning not, and vascular relating to blood supply. So avascular means that they do not have a blood supply of their own. Depending on the epithelial tissue, generally the nutrients will diffuse their way through from the underlying connective tissue. Classification. So epithelial tissue is classified by two different categories, both in how many layers of cells there are and what the shape of the cells are. Okay. So talking about that, tissue can either be simple or stratified, and that refers to the numbers of layers it has. If it is simple, it has one single layer of cells, where the apical surface is on one side of the cell and the basal surface, meaning that bottom or basement membrane attachment, is at the other side of that same cell. Stratified means that there's multiple layers, two or more, where one set is on the apical surface, then there's some cells, and then another set is on the basement membrane. Okay, so they can be simple or stratified. Then there's the shape of the cells, and the shape can either be squamous, which is this sort of flat, squished shape. Think like tiles, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. They can be cuboidal, think cubes, okay? And columnar, like think stretched out like columns. Notice here that the nuclei also change based on the shape. Imagine that they all sort of start off as cuboidal, and either they're squished or they're stretched out. And so the nuclei end up looking similar to the ultimate shape of the cell. So that's another way that can help you identify, is that when you look at tissues, you can look at the way the nuclei look. So let's go through. You can have simple squamous epithelium, right? So simple means it's one layer. Squamous means they're those thin, squished sheets of cells. Simple squamous epithelium, you have this single layer of squamous cells. They are generally wider than they are tall. Again, think like floor tiles. They're going to form a lot of the like air sacs of lungs, lots of these layers, really thin layers where you need to transfer things between layers. So you don't want too many cells, and you want them to be thin because we want to promote diffusion. So air sacs of lungs, etc. Walls of capillaries would be another example. Simple cuboidal epithelium. So again, a single layer of cuboidal cells. They're really common in glands, for example, like salivary glands. Here we have them in kidney tubules. So here they're forming glands or other like walls of these kidney tubules, so that we can be involved in that secretion and absorption. Simple columnar epithelium. So here we have the columnar epithelium. Again, simple means it's a single single layer. These can like line the digestive tract, as an example. So this is here in like the small intestine. Again, secretion and absorption involved in these cells as well. Now moving on to stratified. So we're starting over, right? We did simple, squamous, cuboidal, and columnar. Now we're doing stratified, squamous, cuboidal, and columnar, right? So stratified squamous are where we have all these flat squamous cells, but they're stratified. We have lots of different layers. This is the most common type of stratified epithelium. You generally will not see the others. Lots of layers of cells. The cells at the free edge are incredibly squished. They are going to be super squamous looking. The ones lower can actually be more cuboidal in shape, and that's okay. They're found at sites that receive a lot of abuse, a lot of friction, things like the skin, the esophagus, the mouth. These are going to allow us to like even lose some of those top cells and replace them easily without like getting straight into the body when something scratches the surface. Stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar epithelium, they exist, but it's really not common. They're pretty rare. At the most, it's generally only 2 layers of cells, and it's pretty much found in glands or ducts. We generally won't talk about them that much, but here's stratified cuboidal epithelium, stratified columnar epithelium. Now we're getting into the pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Pseudostratified, the pseudo means false, so it's sort of like falsely stratified. This is interesting. So here, all the cells attached to the basement membrane, which is a quality of simple epithelium, but not all of the cells make it to the apical surface. So it gives this false impression of there being multiple layers. So that's why we call it pseudostratified. It looks stratified even though it's not. But it's not entirely simple either because not all of the cells make it to the apical surface. A lot of times these will have cilia, those little projections. So this is, for example, ciliated columnar pseudostratified columnar epithelium in a human trachea that's going to help move mucus through the trachea. Okay. Again, very similar to simple columnar epithelium with absorption and secretion. Transitional epithelium is also sort of interesting. Here we have, it's a highly modified stratified squamous epithelium. So it gives the impression of stratified squamous epithelium, but it's very, very modified. It lines only a few organs that are specific for stretching, things like the bladder, the uterus, the urethra, all part of that sort of like urinary and reproductive area, and they're subject to stretching significantly. And the qualities of the transitional epithelium allows it to stretch and not rip as easily. The cells of the basal layer are generally cuboidal or columnar, and the cells of the free surface can actually like vary in appearance, right? So we see that here in this image. And so the cells can actually look super different depending on if the organ is stretched or not stretched at any particular time. If it's stretched out, they might look more squamous in shape. If it's relaxed, they might look more cuboidal and columnar in shape. So, and the cells in these cases, when they stretch and are relaxed, have the ability to actually slide past each other. And so that's why it's like making and change shapes. So it's like making transitions, transitional epithelium, and it allows for the stretching functions of those organs. And that's it for epithelium. I'm probably going to cut the video at this point and then start with a new video for the next section. All right, thank you.